Welcome to another edition of the Songwriters Drop In. My name's John Gallagher. Um, Today, I just wanted to shed some light on um, how how songwriting with many people may have changed. And I was um, I was looking at an interview with Trevor Horn, the producer, great producer of the 80s and 90s, who produced Frankie Goes to Hollywood and Grace Jones, Slave to the Rhythm, and he was talking about how how nowadays uh, people book writing sessions, and but what a writing session actually is making a record, and how everything is done very quickly and kind of all together. Um, Now, I'm not knocking this process, and it's very highly subjective to many people. Um, but I wanted to just like pull apart some points that are maybe factors in how inspiration comes about. And so I went online and I went to YouTube and I looked at some of these songwriting sessions, these writing sessions. And on the first one that I looked at, it was a guy that he had one line that he'd sung into his telephone, and from that one line, he immediately just started to lay down a chord or a couple of chords or something, and then he went to recording a drum beat so that he could get a rhythm from where his metering, um, and maybe something that he could derive musical ideas from, um, which is all fine, and it's a different approach to the way that I would use, for instance. Um, but for me, I kind of found it, personally speaking, to be quite fragmented, and that I feel that a lot of writing these days is done this way, and it's kind of lacking in content, and it's lacking in inspiration, um, because of it's just like the end result of writing a song, and the success is kind of in the journey of it, and the journey of it is actually something comes out of the universe and hits you as something that is very inspiring, which which will give you something to write about and give you the inspiration, and from that idea, then you can then go and you can tailor the mood of the music, the chords, the lyrics around that solid concrete idea, rather than doing it the other way around and trying to find ideas that just work over a beat or over a chord. Now, like I say, it's subjective. I'm not saying there's a wrong or right in any of it. Um, but yeah, if I was to try and work that way, I would find it pretty much very well. I wouldn't say impossible, but I would find it extremely difficult to be able to do that, because my brain immediately hems up when I have to sit down and force write anything. Um, and so it's kind of like forcing inspiration. But what I will go on to say is that if you have that kind of mind, then it is in the hands and the creative inspiration of that particular person. Um, For instance, I watched another session, and it was only an 11-minute video of a girl that um, she was sitting down with a computer and a completely blank canvas, so she didn't have anything to write about. Um, but she said, in order for me to find inspiration for something, so she had the foresight to look for some inspiration somewhere. She said that I quite often look around the room and find something that will maybe take my interest. And she she looked around the room and she saw a lamp that had been given to her by her mother, and her mother had had it passed down from her grandmother. So immediately this set up a kind of an idea within her to write about things to do with her childhood. And she wrote down a couple of lines about smelling the flowers in her backyard when she was a child, but also walking in bare feet upon her parents' wooden deck in the garden, where she would get splinters in her feet. And she cleverly used the smelling of the flowers and getting the splinters in her feet from walking on her parents' wooden deck to something of childhood is fleeting and the bliss of being a child, but then getting the splinters from her feet she uses a metaphor for losing that childhood and for getting older and for things to bring what adulthood brings. So it was actually a really clever idea. So this is why I'm saying I'm not knocking either process, but what I am saying is that it's the mind and the foresight of the person involved in that creative process that brings those really that can bring those really good ideas to light, something of concrete inspiration, of concrete ideas, something to draw from. So you're not just laying a beat down and then formulating, because the beat is restricting in itself, maybe to some people, that then you have to write in a certain rhythm. Whereas if you've got an idea of something, lyrically and thematically will create a mood for you to be able to craft the music around that idea thematically, if that makes any sense. Um, another little story, which goes back a little way, about a similar process to the way that I mentioned the girl taking in the last video that I saw, was a story I heard about Willie Nelson when he was working with Hank Cochran. Him and Hank Cochran had been employed in a publishing house I think it was in Nashville, way back when he was a struggling budding songwriter. And he was working with Hank Cochran, and Hank Cochran and him weren't coming up with anything at all that afternoon. Now Hank had to leave, and before he left he said to Willie, if you can write something before I come back, he said, that would be really great, and see what you can come up with. Willie said, what do I write about, And Hank Cochran said, you're a songwriter. He said, you'll find something, So Willie Nelson was left in a blank room with just white walls. And he was thinking, and he looked around the room, and he looked around. And he came up with the song Hollow Walls, which went on to be really great, quite a big seller for him, So it's in the hands of the person that is writing. It's in the hands of the user, and you have to draw inspiration from something, and that's what makes really good. That's what makes really good songs. The success is in the journey, and the journey will produce the fruits of the labor which are favorable. If you're trying to just write, I need to write a song, and you're doing it as a mechanical thing, it's quite often not going to be inspiring. So that's something to think about and to go away with. And I'm going to leave it there, and I'll return with another video again quite soon. So happy songwriting. Any comments, or if you have any processes or any kind of ways of working which are really interesting in terms of how you go about writing songs. Let me know in the comments below. And so thanks again, and I shall see you all soon. Okay, cheers. Thank you. Bye bye.